Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Maple Grove Scripture Reading Podcast. So last time we were nearing the end of chapter 38, and we saw that God had been pressing Job through the stars. You had the Pleiades governing the spring, Orion bringing winter, the laws of the heavens holding everything in orbit, lightning that goes where God sends it and reports back, the water jars of heaven tipped on God's schedule, not ours. Every question came back to the same point. Job is dealing with a God who runs all of this, all of the time, and has been doing so since before Job even existed to notice. Well, today we are going to finish up chapter 38 and then move over into chapter 39, and God is going to turn from the sky to the animals. Let me read through it. Do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger of the lions when they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in a thicket? Who provides food for the raven when its young cry out to God and wander about for lack of food? Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Do you count the months till they bear? Do you know the time they give birth? They crouch down and bring forth their young. Their labor pains are ended. Their young thrive and grow strong in the wilds. They leave and do not return. Who let the wild donkey go free? Who untied its ropes? I gave it the wasteland as its home, the salt flats as its habitat. It laughs at the commotion in the town. It does not hear a driver's shout. It ranges the hills for its pasture and searches for any green thing. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? Will it stay by your manger at night? Can you hold it to the furrow with a harness? Will it till the valleys behind you? Will you rely on it for its great strength? Will you leave your heavy work to it? Can you trust it to haul in your grain and bring it to your threshing floor? So God opens this passage by talking about the lion. And look at how the question's framed. He says, do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger of the lions when they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in a thicket? Now, Job can't hunt for a lioness. That's, I think, obvious. But what the question is implying is the more important part, is that God does. God is the one who manages the food supply for the most powerful predator in the world. The lion crouches in its den waiting, and God has arranged the whole system by which it eats. There's nothing accidental about it. Satisfy the hunger. That's what he does. The needs of these animals are being attended to by someone who sees them even when no human does. And then immediately God turns to the raven, and the contrast is pretty sharp. He says, who provides food for the raven when its young cry out to God and wander about for lack of food? In Jewish law, ravens were unclean birds. They were scavengers. Nobody farms them. Nobody domesticates them. And nobody would put them on a list of creatures worth caring about. They're the opposite end of the spectrum from the lion. And their young are helpless. They're wandering around. They're lost. They're hungry. But then look at what those young ravens do. They cry out to God. There's something in the nature of need, even animal need, that reaches upward. Young ravens who don't know anything, who have no theology, who are just hungry. And something in them reaches toward God, and God hears it and provides. The same God who manages the hunt for the most powerful creature alive also hears the hunger of birds that nobody cares about. Now, Job has spent all of these chapters making the case that his suffering has gone unnoticed. God has stopped paying attention to him. And God says, I hear the ravens. I watch the lions. There is nothing in all of creation, however small, however overlooked, that falls outside my care. The question isn't whether God is watching. The question is whether Job understands how far that watching actually reaches. Well, then he brings in mountain goats and the deer. He says, do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Do you count the months till they bear? Right now, somewhere in the mountains, there's a mountain goat that's giving birth on a cliff face. Nobody's watching it. Nobody knows the timing. There's no vet on call. There's no farmer standing by. No record being kept. The animal crouches down, brings forth its young, and the kid stands up within minutes and navigates the rock the way the rest of us navigate flat ground. It'll grow strong, thrive in the wild, and eventually it's going to walk away and not come back. Now, Job doesn't count their months. He doesn't watch. He's never seen any of it because it's happening in places that he's never been and that he's never going to go to. But God, he knows the time. He watches. And then the birth happens exactly as it should. He says they crouch down and bring forth their young. Their labor pains are ended. Their young thrive and grow strong in the wilds. They leave and do not return. They leave and do not return. These animals achieve complete independence. No human midwifed that birth. No farmer raised the young. God built them into everything they need to grow strong and then walk away, and they do it generation after generation in places that Job has never been. God is the one who attends those births. God counts those months. God built the instincts into those creatures that let them stand up in the wild and thrive. There is a vast world of life being sustained right now, entirely outside Job's knowledge or involvement, or ours. Job has been questioning the reach of God's attention, and God is pointing to mountain goats. Your attention doesn't go there, he says, but mine does. And then he brings in the wild donkey. Who let the wild donkey go free? Who untied its ropes? I gave it the wasteland as its home, the salt flats as its habitat. God designed the wild donkey to be free. That was a deliberate choice. Domesticated animals live inside human systems. They're bred to work. They're kept in pens. They're trained to answer to a driver. The wild donkey lives in the wasteland and the salt flats, the dry, barren land that nobody farms, a land that's useless to human purposes. That's its home, and God put it there on purpose. And then comes this. He says it laughs at the commotion in the town. It doesn't hear a driver's shout. The wild donkey is completely indifferent to human civilization. The market, the noise, all the structures of human society, none of that is registering. No one can drive that donkey. No one can shout it into line. It ranges the hills for its own pasture, searches for its own green thing, and couldn't care less about any of the things going on in the human world. And I think there's a touch of humor in that image, but there's also something deliberate in God choosing that image because he made this animal free. He designed into creation a creature that does not serve human purposes. It can't be called. It lives entirely outside our systems because God decides which animals will work for us and which won't. That's his call. It's not ours. So Job has been operating as if the right ordering of his circumstances is something that he can argue for and negotiate and even demand. And God is pointing to an animal that was built to laugh at human demands. Even the animal world has things in it that are not at Job's disposal, and that's by God's design. Well, then he brings in the wild ox, and look at how God asks that question. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? Will it stay by your manger at night? Now, notice the word there, consent. God isn't asking whether Job could overpower the wild ox. He's asking whether it will choose to serve Job. And the answer is no. The wild ox in Job's world was a legendary creature. It was massively powerful, the ancestor of domestic cattle, but it was untamable. If you somehow had one of those in your possession, you'd have potential strength that could move more than any team of oxen that you owned. But the problem was you couldn't use it. It wouldn't stay by your manger. You couldn't harness it to the furrow. You couldn't trust it with your grain. God continues. He says, will you rely on it for its great strength? Will you leave your heavy work to it? Can you trust it to haul in your grain and bring it to your threshing floor? And again, the answer is no, because the wild ox is not going to do any of that. God built this enormous world-class strength into an animal and made it so that human beings can't get any of that strength. And that was a design decision. God decided that, not Job. Now think about what that means. Every oxen team in Job's field, every domesticated animal that works for him, those are gifts. God decided that those animals would serve human purposes. He could have made every powerful animal as tameable as the wild ox, meaning not very, but he didn't. The fact that you can have any animal willing to work with you is because God made it that way. The wild ox is a reminder that nothing in creation is at your disposal by your own right. Every one of these animals lives entirely outside Job's management and entirely within God's. God feeds creatures that Job couldn't feed even if he tried. God watches births that Job can't watch because they're in places that he's never been. God built freedom into animals that laugh at human civilization, and he withholds the use of enormous power from human hands. Job's had nothing to do with any of that. The same God who hears young ravens cry out is the God managing Job's life right now. The same God who attends mountain goat births on cliff faces in the dark is the God that Job has been demanding an explanation from. Job keeps coming back to the idea that if he could just get before God and make his case, then things could be sorted out. That his view of his situation is clear enough to evaluate whether justice has been done. And God is saying, you don't even count the months for mountain goats. You can't feed a lion. You can't call a wild donkey. The wild ox isn't going to consent to help you. The world that God is running is so much larger and so much more attended to than Job can see from where he stands. Now, again, this is not really an answer to Job's suffering. It does not explain why a man who did nothing wrong is in the condition that Job's in. But it's starting to put an honest question on the table. And that question is, do you even have enough of a picture to be sure that something has gone wrong? Next time, we're going to stay in chapter 39. We'll get through verses 13 through 30. God's going to keep going through with the animals, so we'll have a part 2 with the animals. We got 4 more that we're going to look at: the ostrich, the horse, the hawk, and the eagle. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk again soon. God bless.